Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the Muslim Podcaster Show. I'm your host Majid, and today I'm joined by my guest, my co-host, Brother JK. Assalamu alaikum, bro, and welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, subhanallah, bro. It's been a long time since I recorded last episode. It's been about 3 months. For many reasons, but inshallah, we're back, and I thought, who better to have on, other than my fellow comrade JK.
Alhamdulillah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's good to have you on, bro. And how are things anyway? How are things in general?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah, honored to be for you to think of me for your comeback. No, everything's good, alhamdulillah. Yeah. Yeah, obviously there's lots going on, lots to keep on top of. Still very dire scenes in Palestine, Gaza, and obviously some escalation more around the region. So which I'm sure we'll get into, but yeah. Alhamdulillah, personally speaking, yeah, can't complain when you see what the Ummah is going through.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. And like you said, there's loads to talk about. And that's why I've been thinking of coming back with an episode for a while now. But with what's happening currently, I thought, you know what, it's definitely time to record. Because especially what we're seeing in regards to the Iran and the Zionist entity conflict, this has massive implications in the region, right? And also, we have a lot of Muslims that are asking questions. And I was thinking, you know what, let's do an episode where we don't really need to go into too many of the political events as such. We already know that the Zionist state, on the 13th of June, attacked Iran. Okay, a preemptive attack, whatever you want to call it. Since then, there's been tit for tat every night. And Tel Aviv is looking really nice at the moment. But that's what we've been seeing. Everyone knows about that, right? But there are questions people are asking in regards to why is this happening? We thought Iran was in bed with the Americans. Is this to do with the Iranian, nuclear weapons or, proposed nuclear weapons? So there's a lot of questions that people are asking, right? So let's sort of get into it. And the first question I think we should tackle is what's happening? Is this purely about nuclear weapons, or is there something more beneath the surface?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And yeah, there's still lots of open questions. People obviously it's still escalating, but to answer your question, I don't think it is just about nuclear weapons. I think that was part of it. It's mainly a pretext for the attacks. For obviously Israel has taken the opportunity. I think there's multiple reasons. One is that given the Gaza genocide, Israel and the Netanyahu government have seen it as an opportunity with a weakened Iran. If you think about where Iran was when it had Assad on one side with the Syrian regime, which would support the Iranians, that's kind of been dismantled, obviously, with the replacement and with al-Sharaa in place now. You've obviously had the recent stuff going on in Lebanon and kind of the weakening of Hezbollah. So again, Iran and kind of the axis of resistance is significantly weakened. So to be honest, I think Netanyahu, with the blessing of America, basically took this as an opportunity to kind of, obviously from their side of things, to kind of land the fatal blow. That's probably what the intention was, that this is the opportunity. This whole pretext about nuclear weapons has been the same excuse, same line that Netanyahu has been saying for decades, to be honest. So it's nothing new. This is always, they've always said this, and there's been some footage, I don't know if you've seen, like of Netanyahu and the Israeli government continually saying, "Oh, Iran is enriching and developing nuclear weapons," but I think there's much more to it. It's about really dismantling Iran and weakening Iran, and also not just Iran. I think, yeah, we can talk about Iran, but it's actually about weakening the Ummah and kind of demilitarizing the Ummah and reducing the power of the Ummah. Not because they're scared of Iran, per se. They obviously know that the Ummah is awakening, especially after the events in Gaza. The Ummah, as well as the world at large, the population at large, have seen the Zionists for who they really are. They've seen the Americans for who they are. They've seen that they've gone against their own international law. They've basically exposed themselves as being the true aggressors. So they know that the Ummah is awakening and seeing that the Ummah is seeing that, look, we can't have trust in these systems anymore, that have been told as being like the best thing since sliced bread, the thing we should always be referring to. They know that they don't refer it to themselves. So again, I think there is something about the Americans and Israel trying to get one over the Muslim world, over the Ummah, especially since what's happened in Palestine.
Yeah, that's some good points, bro. Some good points. So, in terms of like with Iran, okay, it's not just about Iran, is it? Because I think if you look at the condition of the Middle East at the moment, what we can see is actually Iran is one of, or someone could argue, the last in the domino, the last domino, right?
Yeah.
In terms of for the Zionists and America to achieve what they want. So just a bit of background for people is just a simple way of thinking about it is, look, we know that the Zionist state, this colonialist state, was set up in the heart of the Muslim world, right?
Yeah.
And it was set up as a strategic base, first by the British and then later on adopted by the Americans. Okay, and this entity serves the West's objectives in the land, which is to keep the Muslims divided, keep them in turmoil, and basically protecting the interests of the West, but mainly the US in the region. So if you think of it like that, then what you can think is, since its inception in 48, right, there has been resistance to its existence from day one. So for this entity to be fully accepted into the region, not as a foreigner, but as something which is indigenous, um, it can't have resistance and it can't have people questioning its actual existence in terms of whether it, exists or not, whether it has a right.
Mm.
So what we can see is that one of the ways of the Zionists and Americans to achieve this is to make Israel the dominant power in that area, right? In the Middle East, the dominant power.
Mm-hmm.
So what we can see is, now think about this goes back decades. All the countries which were you could argue neighbors, B, which, even I'm not saying this is genuine on their part, however, they held a stance of anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, right?
Yeah.
And look, the reality is people like Saddam, people like Assad, they use this for their own political interests. However, that was their stance. Their stance was one which was, we don't recognize this entity and we're for the Palestinian cause and we want to liberate this land for the Palestinians, right? That was their
Mm.
official
It
stance.
was.
And thirdly, is these countries had some might behind them. They weren't failed states, right? Okay,
Mm.
they were dictatorships. However, I mean, if you look at Iraq in the 70s and the 80s, certainly in the 70s, it was one of the best countries in the world in terms of literacy, in terms of GDP,
Yeah.
in terms of the way the society and the economy was, right? So if you look at from then till now, you see Syria finished, Iraq finished, Libya finished, right?
Mm.
These are the major countries, and here let's not include, your UAE or your Bahrain and your Oman. These countries are just villages; they're not actual real countries, right?
Mm.
So basically, what I'm trying to say is trying to take you down a journey of
Yeah.
the only country now that's left in the region. Which, look, I don't think that the Iranians are doing it for Palestine, because the bombing they're doing right now, they could have done it whilst Gaza was going on at the start,
Yeah.
right? They use it for their own political gains. However, they still are openly against the Israel, and
Yeah.
they are still pro-Palestine, right? I.e., they are the only they are the last country that's left, which is seen as a resistance country, the axis of
Yeah,
resistance.
yeah,
So that's how I see it. By taking them out, all you are left with is normalization
exactly.
and Abrahamic Accords. What's your thoughts, Shaky?
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with that, and the way you put it as well, that they are the only kind of established state, if you want to say that, because these Gulf countries like the UAE and Bahrain and these they initially, the fact is the kind of desert are like these countries have been manufactured anyway, and also they've always been kind of, they're tourist destinations, especially like Dubai and things like this, but they've always been in line with the West. UAE especially, this has been like a center for the West in terms of its campaigns against the Muslims. So that you can't view them in the same light. But yeah, some of these other nations that over the years, as you explained, like America has intervened again using false pretexts like weapons of mass destruction and other things to really intervene in our lands and really diminish the power of the Muslims, so that we are failed states, basically broken states that you can't really rise. We're going to just be in our own quagmire of trying to kind of find our feet, basically, and that's what's happened in the places like Iraq and Libya, and constant conflict. So Iran, as you said, even though they may not, the regime and the kind of the system there is not necessarily kind of, let's not be blinkered and think that they are all for Palestine and Gaza and they are the leaders of the Muslims. They're not. They're not. Of course, we've seen that, and to be fair, they've got some blood on their hands as well in terms of what they did in Syria and things like that. Hezbollah as well. We can't we can't ignore that. But at the same time, we have to be balanced in that they were a thorn in the side of Israel and America, especially if and the Yemen, the Houthis of Yemen are tied to them as well. They are a thorn in the side. They are doing some actions in, when it comes to the Red Sea and trade, and the fact that the Houthis are this very small militia, you could call it, are causing damage. They are a thorn in the side of the West. So as you said, that what America and Israel are really trying to do is diminish this kind of final stand that the Muslims have in this region, that is pro-Palestine and supporting the Muslims. And again, the people of these regions are purely supportive of Palestine. You've seen the marches that have been happening in Yemen and Iran, and the chants that they shout. They know who the enemy is, right? And they would want their governments to carry on being a resistance. And I think that there was a role that Iran had once upon a time when it came to kind of the scarecrow of the Middle East, to kind of bring Israel into into line, be the opposite end of like the Saudis as well, where you got the kind of Sunni Shia divide. Obviously, the US and the West used this in our lands to divide and cause sectarianism so that the Muslims would be disunited. So they played their role, and they they will be held accountable for that as well in terms of how much they supported. You had certain people within Iran that would call for jihad against Muslims because they were just playing the role, right? So, but at the same time, they are a thorn in the side, and they do have a power. They're not a nuclear power yet, but they are a state with hypersonic, ballistic missiles that they're using, that's surpassed and got past the Iron Dome, the so-called impenetrable Iron Dome. They've surpassed, right? So at the end of the day, I think you're right. I think the US and the West are trying to kind of weaken the power that the Ummah has in this region, bring to an end Palestine and Gaza when they have obviously still going on, but they bring that will have to come to an end, and the answer to be normalization. So you already have some of these nations that have normalized, but obviously there's a big states like Saudi that they want to fully normalize relations and, as you said, legitimize the Zionist colonial outpost in that region, because for them to exist in the long run, they need to be legitimized, and they can only be legitimized by the Muslims. And they need the Muslim states to do it first, and then the people to do it. And this is one thing we need to continually warn the Ummah against, that we cannot legitimize the Israeli Zionist state, even if that means the two-state solution and some so-called recognition of a Palestinian state. That's not what we want. One thing we should always keep our eye on, really remember that the goal isn't about a Palestinian state. The goal is liberation. The goal is to remove the criminal state of Israel and the occupying force in its entirety. So I agree with all those points, and I think it's something that we just need to really bear in mind when we're thinking about this.
Yeah, 100%, bro. And the point you made about how they've used false pretexts about WMDs and about
Yeah.
nuclear weapons. I think what people have to understand as well is there's a show going on, and this is what I think personally, right? People. I'll speak to a few people, and they were talking about how they were showing these videos of since 80s. My mom was talking. Netanyahu was talking about they're like 3 months away, and it's been going on till then, right? But what people must understand, and Muslims have to understand this, don't think that Netanyahu, and even though this is being pushed, this is my opinion, don't think that they've duped the Americans into any wars that have happened in the Middle East. Because nowadays people, and especially like American patriots, they're saying we were pulled into Iraq, we were pulled into here by Bibi Netanyahu. America is a superpower. You think America is going to be that foolish to fall for the lies of one person? Look, understand this. Everything that's happened in the Middle East has happened in line with exactly what the Americans want, right? Yeah, it has. And that's why if we're looking at right now, and you're looking at the Zionist state of Israel, for it to become a integrated part, resistance has to go. So they have to kill Islamic resistance. They have to kill the Palestinian cause. They have to expand the Abraham Accords. These things have to happen, right? And as we know, what people were saying, had Hamas not done what they did on October the 7th, the Saudis, you're talking a couple of weeks, they were going to accept. That's what people are saying. I don't know how true it is, right?
Yeah, because he was on Fox News, like, I don't know, a few days earlier than the October 7th, bin Salman saying we are closer than ever to normalizing. So they were like you said, a few weeks away.
So that's exactly, JK. So that's what we think about, and they will be the dominant power. Now, look, here no one is saying Iran is doing it for Palestine. What you have to understand is that Iran probably is a bit different to your Iraq or your Syria, in the sense that Iran is a very old country.
Mm.
And what we have here, we have in Iran this fusion of Iranian Persian nationalism and Islam, right? So they aspire to go back to the days when they were ruling the place, which the Persian Empire did, right? So they do have these aspirations, and that's why you can see that when America allowed them to, they expanded their influence into Syria, into Iraq.
Yeah.
Obviously, they were in Lebanon anyway, right?
Yeah.
They were allowed to do this with the vacuum that the Americans left. And also the Americans wanted them to do this because in order for the plans to go through, they needed that sectarian Sunni Shia thing going on. And these guys, they fit the role very well.
Yeah.
So with Iran, think of it this way as well. Even if it is not for Palestine, even if it's not for Islam, even if it's just to be the dominant regional power in the region, there is a standoff between the Zionist state and Iran. Even if you look at it that way.
Yeah, in terms of competition.
It's competition. It's competition. Forget even Islam's into this. It's competition.
Yeah.
But what's important is this, my brothers and sisters. If Iran is dismantled, if its missiles are removed, if its nuclear program is binned, if it now gets fragmented and balkanized, in whose benefit is this? And this is why, JK, when you mentioned at the beginning, it's not even about Iran, it's about the Ummah. Because we can see where things have been going for decades now with the destruction of the regimes in place and becoming failed states. We've seen that.
Yeah.
How does it benefit the Muslims if now the only other nation, even if for its own reasons, was blatantly carrying the Palestinian cause and talking about the elimination of this entity is now gone? Then what is going to be the state of the Muslim world in the Middle East then? Who's going to be dominant? Who's going to be in power? It's obvious, right?
So yeah, like, as you say, Maj, I think that's the key point, that it's all about demilitarizing the ummah, reducing the power of the ummah, regardless of the actors at play and their ambitions. That's not the point. The point is really to diminish the strength of the ummah and the power of the ummah. And one of the key kind of, if even if you think about the Gaza genocide, obviously they want to bring this to an end, and America can bring it to an end tomorrow if they wanted to. They could. They have the clout to be able to do that. But one of the key aims that they have always spoken about, or one of the key conditions for ceasefire and bringing the war to an end, has been what? For the resistance to lay down its arms. This is what they've said, that release the hostages and lay down your arms. You cannot resist it. And this goes back to your broader point, that it's all about removing the resistance. And what that will do is legitimize that Zionist entity, entrench the entity, open up the avenues for normalization so that it becomes embedded in the region. And this is what it's about. And this is why what we've seen happening with Iran, what's happened previously with Hezbollah, what's happening in terms of kind of reducing the power of the axis of resistance, and also the resistance movements within Palestine as well. It's all about reducing their power, laying down their arms so that they can't fight back and they can't resist. And this is the dangerous ploy that America is behind, obviously with the Zionists.
Yeah, bro. You make a valid point there about Gaza and what their demands are. And even if you think about it, even when the Iranians, when they were discussing with the in the nuclear deals, from a certain percentage of enrichment to 0%, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And if you look at the Zionist playbook, what we see is even in the sort of wars that happened before, whether you can call them wars or not, but conflicts with Egypt and stuff like that. One of the things that these guys do, right, and you can call it preemptive or whatever, they'll go and destroy the air force and the air defense systems first, and then they have full control of the skies. Now, if you think about it now, what did they do? What did they do when the Assad regime fell? They destroyed 80% of the capabilities of a normal state.
yeah,
So in their minds, is domination is through having these states that are around, that are weakened, that have internal conflicts, that have no defense, they have no way of defending themselves, right? And they cannot stand for a nation like Iran to be able to defend itself. So this is actually in line with this, and that's the thing. And just to get your perspective also about this huge discourse about the supporting the Iranians and the Shia, and some online people basically saying that the Iranians are worse than the actual Zionists themselves, and you know what I mean, where it's strange because when you speak to a normal person, they're all behind Iran, or you could say they're all behind the destruction of the Zionist state, right? Whichever one you want to say it. But no one's really going into specifics of the Shia and this and at the masjid where I've been to these talks and stuff like that, whether it's Brailview masjids, whether it's your Deobandi ones, bro, I've not come across the sectarian vibe. It's all been about it's good what's happening, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So first of all, I want to kind of get your thoughts on why is this sectarian vibe being pushed, but also I want to link it in with this question that can these people not see that just say the Americans or the Zionists achieve what they want?
Yeah.
How does that benefit the Ummah? That even no matter, even if Iran's doing it for themselves or they're doing it for their 12 beliefs or whatever, the
Yeah.
fact that there's a counter, the fact that there's an obstacle for the Americans and the Zionists to achieve exactly what they want in the region and to remove the Palestinian cause from the map, right? Even if it's for their own interest, how's that not better than the Zionists having full reign of the skies and totally finishing the Palestinian cause, where there's not a single ounce of resistance left or meaningful resistance?
Yeah.
What will happen to these Sunni Shia? This is what the Iranians did in Syria and Iraq, and what value does this conversation have? What's your thoughts, bro?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, before in the past, I would give a little bit of an excuse to say that they mean well. They want, obviously they want to protect Islam from deviancy, and that's why, you know, this they're focused on the Tawheed and things like that. Obviously, Tawheed is a massive part of Islam. Um, but now I genuinely, I'm not saying everyone who does it is. I'm not saying everyone is you know, doing it deceptive. But I think in terms of where this movement started and has kind of gained a foothold within the ummah, quite unfortunately, to be honest, I think it is very deceptive in that this kind of stance, where it's about, you know, well, you know, some people are actually celebrating the fact that how they perceive it, two enemies are fighting each other and kind of destroying each other. It's totally incorrect because, firstly, it's sectarian. It pushes sectarianism as though the Muslims are fully divided, and we fall into the sectarianism that the West really embedded within our region. And secondly, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam never, you know, if you look at you know, they say that they are basing it on Islam, but actually the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam never expected us to have no differences whatsoever, and where there are differences to kind of go at war with each other. It was never the case, and you saw even the Sahaba. Like I mentioned in khutbah the story about Muawiyah and Ali, and uh, it's very fitting because obviously that conflict actually did, it's kind of linked to the Shia Sunni. There's some, you know, some, like, not fully, but obviously there was a disagreement between who would gain power and things like this. So the story is, as you might know, like, just to paraphrase, there was obviously a bit of a conflict between Muawiyah and Ali, and the Caesar of Rome, Heracles, he saw this and he heard about this and he sent a letter to Muawiyah saying, "Look, I can see that you're having issues, and we think that you are more befitting to be the leader of the caliphate than Ali. If you want, we could, we will. So I will send an army and bring back the head of Ali for you." And Muawiyah saw this letter, and he responded saying that, "Look, this conflict between brothers has got nothing to do with you. You have no right to intervene here." And he said that, "I will send an army to you that is so big that the front of the army will be next to you and the back of its army will be next to me." I mean, obviously, it's a big region, isn't it? "And I will, I will take your head and I will give it to Ali." Meaning, what does this tell us? That regardless of the conflicts and fitna that may be there, and it was a fitna at the time, that at the end of the day, Muslims are brothers to each other, and we don't align with the non-Muslims over our Muslim brothers and sisters, even if we have differences. Because I'm not saying we don't have differences with the Shia. We do. There are legitimate differences. We can't just brush this under the carpet. But at the end of the day, as you said, what does it benefit us in terms of, you know, reducing the power of the Ummah, praising these actions and being happy with it, and not having an element of kind of intelligence when it comes to understanding what's happening here? So it's really bad. It goes against the Islam in terms of being united. You know, Allah says, "Wa'tasimu bihablillahi jami'an wa la tafarraqu." Hold fast to the rope of Allah and be not divided. And what is the reason we've had all these issues in the region? How is it that there's one little minor state, if you want to call it, occupying entity is probably the better word. How is it that it's in the middle of this Muslim region, surrounded by Muslim states and armies and power? Yeah, it exists. And not only does it exist, it is able to commit a genocide, you know, the worst in history. How? Because we're divided. And that is, you know, that is very telling. So we as Muslims shouldn't reinforce this. We should actually wake up and recognize that this division, this sectarianism has been used against us. And we need to really step out of that, and really be intelligent when it comes to issues. And when we have time to discuss the differences, we will have time. But now is not the time. But yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, bro. You know what? I want to probably give it a bit of a different angle, just in case someone is really hell bent on this sectarian vibe, right?
Yeah.
Let's put it like this. Look, with Iran, obviously there's definitely some deviancy in terms of their of beliefs.
Yeah.
100%, right? Also, we know that their actions in Iraq and in Syria, even though I believe they were all politically motivated, but they use sectarianism themselves, and their onslaught against the Sunnis was on a next level. 100%. So you know these groups, these militia. I can't remember the Arabic word from now, but these militia now, which are in Iraq, which were in Syria,
Yeah.
which had directly links to the Iranians, like the Badr Brigade and stuff like this, right? Bro, they committed massacres, right? Okay, I'm not. I'm That's fine. But I'm saying, look, let's look at it from a different point of view. Whatever the Iranians did, even if they did it on a belief point of view, right, because of Shiaism, or whether they did it from an Iranian point of view, from a strategic point of view, right? Obviously, it was bad. But let's look at the opposite. Let's look at the on the other side. Here, what I'm saying is, look, the plans for the region are against the Ummah, they are against Islam itself.
Yeah.
Even the plans of integrating the Zionist state, killing the Palestinian cause, having Abrahamic Accords, pushing all this moderate Islam and having a weak Ummah, and then ultimately changing Islam, right? All of this is linked. All of this is linked. So, bro, which one is worse to you? In
Mm.
the sense, like, would you rather want the Americans, the Zionists, to win, knowing that their objectives are against the Ummah and against Islam, or the Iranians, if they did do what they did for personal gains, obviously they should be held accountable. But which one's worse? That's
Yeah.
why when people are saying they're worse than the Zionists and they kill more than the Zionists, and I
Yeah.
don't understand, because even the people that the Zionists killed, they killed it on behalf of their Western leaders. So if you're
Exactly.
thinking about it, even that claim is wrong, because actually American-led wars have killed millions.
Yeah.
But again, there's no point in, it's childish who killed more, the Iranians
Yeah.
or the Americans. That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is who are who's gonna be which situation is gonna be worse for the Ummah. So
Yeah.
even if they don't consider the Iranians as being Muslim, okay, consider them as non-Muslims. But even whatever they do it for just their own national strategic interests, right? Because they want to be a power and dominate or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bro, that's completely different to the West who want to kill off Islam.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Can people not see that?
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is that I'm not all of them, but there are certain movements within the Salafis, like the Madkhalis, who I don't think they even see that, because at the end of the day, they're supportive of what bin Salman. Okay, maybe not supportive, but they allow bin Salman to do what he's doing in terms of what's happening in Saudi, and also I think they'd be fully open to normalization as well, as long as it kind of means that they're stable and they don't care about Palestine enough to be able to support normalization. That kind of says it all, isn't it? So I think we're probably even, for some, I'm not saying all of them, but there are some parts of that movement that are so extreme, if you want to use the word, that even I actually think they wouldn't view that as worse.
Bro,
They'll
forget
be happy with
Madkhalis. I'm talking
it.
about people who, I'm not going to mention names,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no.
who do a lot of good work.
Yeah, yeah,
A lot of good work. And I'm really surprised.
yeah,
There's some of
yeah,
them. I'm really surprised, like, it doesn't make sense. All right, so bro, yeah, I find that really strange, bro. I find that strange. But listen, let's continue with the rest of
yeah,
the episode. So what I want to just look into now briefly is, what does Iran do? I see three scenarios. One is they surrender, um, and when I say surrender, basically if they surrender, they're finished, because like they themselves have been saying, like, if today we bin our nuclear program, the next thing is going to be bin your ballistic missile program. The next thing is going to be disband your militaries. The next thing is going to be you can't have radar systems, you can't have air defense systems. That's how it's going to be, right? So either they surrender, or what they do is they play within the rules. Do you know what I mean? So they escalate a little, they even take a beating, but enough for the Iranian regime to survive this, right? And they continue living. Okay. And the third one is, you know what? They cornered now. They just go all out. They call on all their proxies, and they just go for it, right? In a sense where with the attitude of, look, even if we don't exist at the end of this, why we're going to give you one hell of a bloody nose,
Yeah.
right? What do you think they should do? These are the only
Yeah.
things. I mean, unless you think there's another scenario as well, there's not. And also remember, now Trump has bombed them.
Yeah.
So like up until now, they were saying if America gets involved, we're going to deal with their bases. Okay, this
Yeah.
is going to be telling now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do they respond as they said they have,
Yeah.
or is their bluff called out?
So I think if you ask me what they should do, absolutely the third option in terms of, you're in this situation now, just go all out. And when I say all out, I think beyond the kind of barriers that have been set for you by the colonialist, and just because at the end of the day, right, Israel is not a strong state. It's not a strong state. And because we've seen that, well, not only with what's happening in Iran and Israel, but also the fact that they've not been able to defeat the resistance. The fact that the Houthis are still causing damage. The fact is they are a small state there, and they can be destroyed if we did go all out and cause significant damage. That, like you said, America would need to get involved to kind of save Israel. So I think the third option is what we would ask, and have reliance on Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Okay, yeah, like you said, they might be doing for nationalistic regions, but sometimes these events, they don't play out in terms of theory. They play out in terms of, we've seen that with Gaza as well. Like, the way that the way the resistance has been able to kind of really stand its ground and not be reduced and removed. I think it's absolutely it's possible, and we have to have that reliance on Allah. And I think so. The answer to what they should do is that third option. Target the bases of Israel and really weaken them so that they can't rise again. I think that would be the option to take, and the Ummah would be behind them. And maybe even some other states will gain some, bravery to kind of back them, because they'll see that, look, Iran is able to do something. Let's kind of break ranks and do something, and some of the armies maybe even get some motivation behind it. Things like this can happen. We have seen it, but they need to really take that action. But if you were to ask me what will most likely happen, I think it is probably the middle option, because I don't think they have enough of clout about them that they don't want to just be fully diminished and dismantled. As you said, they've got a long history, and that option one of just surrendering, they would have surrendered already, to be honest. If I don't think they want to do that, hence why they have attacked back, and they have really kind of really just struck back at Tel Aviv and Haifa.
Yeah, but doesn't option 2 lead to option 1?
It does, in the sense that there is a risk that it does. It's in what. So my thinking is that at the end of the day, Israel has been surprised with what Iran has done, and Israel is fighting on two fronts, or many fronts, but two major fronts, in the sense that they continue to commit the genocide, and that's obviously taken up resource, and they're fighting Iran, and they don't have unlimited resources, so they will need to come to they will stop at one point as well. And I think it's a game of who is going to stop first, right? So I think option 2 is basically behind the scenes, you come to an agreement with America to stop. And I think this, it's early days because it just happened overnight. But I think what's happened with America saying that they've targeted Iran and destroyed its capability, and what's used obliterated. I don't think, we know that we've heard earlier news is saying that it's just kind of surface damage and they haven't obliterated. But actually, it may be that America want to show that they've done something to stop the Iranians and really kind of bring an end to this conflict so that all parties go away with something.
Yeah, bro. To be honest with you, what you're saying there is kind of valid because even if you look at Trump's tweet, about we bombed Iran and whatever, at the end there were in big capitals, it said, now it's time for peace,
Yeah,
right? And there's also reports that from the Iranian side, that Iran is saying that actually America tipped them off about this attack so that there were no people on these sites, and also
yeah,
the enriched uranium was in a secure location, right? Similar to when the Iranians tipped off the Americans that we're going to attack that base in Iraq after they killed General Soleimani, right? So that kind of feeds into what you're saying, where it's got to a stage now where there's both sides are thinking, whoa, okay, we thought this would have been finished by now. Okay,
yeah.
it's like like where you've sucker punched someone hoping you'll knock them out, but then they've got up and given you a few licks back, and you're thinking, actually, you know what, it's best to let's
Le-
say, you know what, okay, look, let's call it a draw,
yeah, 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 yeah. I think
because
so. I think so.
my original plan was to sucker punch him to knock him out. That never happened. It could well be
Yeah,
that, so to show a bit of face. Again, though, that is a big compromise, though, on all parties, to be honest with you,
it
because
is. It is.
they've
Yeah,
talked about regime change, they've talked about all their weapons being destroyed, right?
yeah, yeah,
Who knows? Who knows? But going back to the point, I think you're right. That is probably going to be most likely the outcome. Iran isn't refugees living in tents.
no,
Um, However, I just wanted to quickly add as well that in terms of point three, I think what happens is, if Iran thinks, you know what, now's the time. Okay, even if we have this option two, this today, option one's going to come about again soon, right? So let's just do this. But the problem that handicaps a lot of these nations, bro, is this deception of international law, because they're always trying to do things like, oh yeah, we are only attacking military targets. We are attacking this. We're in line with international law. They attacked us first. This is against. The people who push international law, they violate all the time.
exactly.
But everyone else has to A, abide by it, and B, is constrained by it.
Yeah, exactly.
You understand what I
It's,
say? So even if they did want to do option three, bro, they just got to go all out, and and
yeah,
and their rule base should be survival. What do they call it?
survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. That should be
Yeah, yeah,
the rule game, whatever it
exactly.
takes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Ultimately, right?
yeah, yeah.
So let's see what happens with that, my brother. Let's see what happens with
Mm,
that. The only thing is, people are behind Iran at the moment. They're not really looking at this sectarian thing.
no,
People or Muslims are loving, and not just Muslims, people around the world, whether in the West, whether in the global South, they are loving the scenes from Tel Aviv and Haifa right now, right? Um,
yeah,
the only thing is, I think it's clear now for Iran. Look, they really want to take you out. What do they do? Do they prolong? What do they say? Do they kick the can down the road, or do they pick up the can and crush it on their own
exactly,
terms? They're the only
exactly.
options. But listen, I want to ask you one last question before we wrap this up in terms of Gaza,
Yeah.
because whilst what's been happening in Iran and these attacks overnight, tit for tat, bro, what we've seen in Gaza has actually become worse.
Yeah.
It's not eased off; it's become worse, right? Do you
Yeah.
think there's an element of this being a distraction from what's happening in Gaza, or is it that Gaza is getting to the final stages of their plan now, which is to totally
Mm.
remove the people from there? What's your thoughts?
I don't know if it's fully whether it's fully kind of, oh yeah, we're doing this to distract from what's happening in Gaza, but the reality is that Gaza has been it continues. The genocide is continuing. Muslims are dying daily. Have you seen, like, every day, every night, 40,
Hundreds,
50, 100
bro,
Muslims?
hundreds,
Yeah,
hundreds, hundreds.
exactly. And I think there are some conspiracies taking place in Gaza that is being overshadowed. Like, for example, the whole Gaza Humanitarian Fund aid thing, where the Muslims, the Gazans are going to these aid sites are being shot to death, and literally they are risking their lives to get aid. And this is the only route for aid. And because they have two choices, it's so sad. They have starvation and dying out of starvation, or going to get the aid but risking getting shot. I mean, and that's why I'm sorry, but Tel Aviv, Israel, we've got no sympathy for them anyway, regardless of what they've done. But we don't have, they can't play the sympathy card. They can't play the crying that, oh, you target our hospital. I'm sorry, but you've targeted every hospital in Gaza. And not only have you targeted the hospital, you've targeted the medics. You have buried the medics to hide the evidence. You're in no place to cry now. I'm sorry, you don't. So it just shows the immense hypocrisy of the West and the Zionist regime. So I don't know whether it's to cover up, but the reality is it hasn't lessened. It's not as though they've been so focused on what they're doing in Iran, let's kind of reduce what we're doing in Gaza. To be honest, they've been doing it undercover. They've been doing it more, whilst the world's attention has been taken over by Iran and Israel conflict. And I think we do need to make sure that we don't just ignore what's happening in Palestine. At the end of the day, the innocent Muslims are being slaughtered continually on a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly, bro. And the thing is, you know what? It happens to the best of us. We're checking Al Jazeera. We're all fixated on
Yeah,
what's happening. With Iran, and is it going to escalate and this and that, and then you actually kind of like you'll see a little headline about 60 people killed whilst queuing for bread. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And you're like, oh
exactly.
damn, it's like obviously that's still happening, but it's actually escalating, and that's why part of me thinks, you know what? Why don't these Iranians attack the military in Gaza?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know
exactly,
where
exactly.
exactly where they're
Yeah,
stationed, but surely they've got bases in there. Target them.
and this is the point that I was making, that start working outside of the kind of barriers. Do something that goes beyond the kind of international. Like, if they did something like that, I think that would have more implications and in their favor than what they're doing in terms of, they are attacking, and it's good to see Tel Aviv and Haifa burning. But at the end of the day, like you said, they could do something a bit more intelligent to actually help the Palestinians. But yeah, hello, Alam. I'm not sure. I'm obviously not an expert.
Yeah, bro. But bro, listen, I think what we'll do is we'll bring the podcast to a close. I did have
Yeah,
quite a few other questions for you, certainly in terms of what lessons Muslims can take from this. However, what I will do is, I know you recorded a khutbah on this. I will link
yeah,
the khutbah into the description on this podcast. And just, I don't know whether people will know because of my editing skills, but we've had a lot of technical problems on this podcast. Hence why it's better to end it whilst we've still got some bandwidth, because brother JK has been having bandwidth and laptop issues. So Alhamdulillah, it's good that we've actually been able to put something together, which I hope clears things up a little. Obviously, not all the answers are here, but I know a lot of people have been asking the whys and the hows, and
yeah,
why is this happening? And look, I think we've specified it, and the thing to take away is that this is part of a greater plan. It's more than just Iran, like it was more than just Syria, like it was more than just Iraq and Libya. This is something
yeah,
which is a calamity that's facing the ummah, and until we don't appreciate it that way, and we just let them take one by one all those who stand in their way, then ultimately we'll be left with not just treacherous and corrupt rulers, but ones that even if they wanted to do something now, they won't even have the means to do anything. So
yeah, yeah,
that's the reality, and that's how the kuffar are setting up this plan. That even if a genuine ruler comes about, they are going to be presiding over ruins and they can't
Yeah.
face us and take on the might of America and the Zionists and the West. Bro, Jazakallah khair for joining me. Inshallah,
Thank you.
hopefully I'll get you back on soon. And hopefully I've
Sure.
actually started recording more regularly. That's the plan.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone listening at home has benefited from this episode, benefited from the thoughts that JK has shared. And definitely go and check out the Voice of the YouTube channel. And I'll definitely tag in the khutbah that you recorded, bro, because it was a really good khutbah, and the lessons that you've mentioned. If the Muslims take those lessons away and do something about them, I'm sure we'll be closer to being worthy of the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Inshallah.
Bro, Jazakallah khair, and assalamu alaikum to you, and for everyone at home, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.